Hey everybody, we have some questions and answers here from people who have written from all over the place from our channel. I'll try to answer these as quickly as I can as we have a bunch to get through. We really appreciate you subscribing to our channel and following our school here in Ohio. We really do appreciate anyone who has liked us on Facebook or who cares to follow our unique school here. Let's get right into it to try to get these done. Orlando writes, I don't have the time to train at my local dojo as I have a very busy job. Orlando, I would say that's an excuse, and I don't like excuses. So for me, there's no such thing as no time to train. There are 168 hours in each week. 168 hours. So we need to know that we can find 1, 2, or maybe 3 hours a week to train. There really is no reason why we can't find that kind of time. The average person spends about 5 hours a day either watching TV or on their computer or a device of some sort. You can't say that there's no time. There's always time. It's a question of managing our time. And I find that the more that I train 5 days a week, but I find that the more I either meditate or train in martial arts, my time management tends to increase and I get better at focusing on projects to get them done so that I have quote-unquote free time to do what I love to do, which is martial arts. But there's no excuse why someone can't find wherever they train 1, 2, or 3 hours a week to train. There's just no excuse there. Orlando, you have the time as I do. You have to create the time. You have to make the time. You have to do as the best we can to work our schedule around our training rather than trying to get our training around our regular schedule. If you work second or third shift, see if your teacher can offer either private lessons or you can get some sort of day class in. But most schools I know of have afternoon classes or evening, or some are a bit later at night. There's always a way to train if you have the heart for it. Super Vegabot writes, I have a serious question. How would these techniques you're showing fare against a decent Western boxer? A boxer's hand comes back to their face as soon as it's thrown, and I completely agree with Super Vega's point of view. You have to remember, as I say with all our videos, is you're only seeing a small piece of what we do. We train a lot against an attack by a boxer because it's not common. First of all, just make sure you guys know, everyone out there, that the most common person on the street has no training. There's some sort of scumbag thug or something, and they almost always throw a wild haymaker. They throw a sucker punch, and then after that, their skill level is almost zero. Speaking from statistics, the chance that you're going to be fighting a boxer extremely rare, or an MMA fighter extremely rare. And anyone with a martial art background that understands the discipline and the ethics of it is not going to get into a fight. They're going to avoid a fight whenever possible if they've had a good sensei, a good teacher, who has instilled value in them to know that, hey, if you're a boxer, a professional boxer, and you go to a bar on a Friday night and have too much to drink and you get into a fight, you've had a lousy instructor wherever you are. I can just see Rocky's trainer screaming at him, Rock, come on, Rock, and saying, you're an idiot, what did you do getting into a fight on a Friday night? A good teacher knows to tell his or her students, you just don't do that. You don't get into a fight. You de-escalate violence rather than escalating it. But getting back to the question, yes, of course boxers bring their hands back. If you're training in a martial art of Budo where you're training against armor, you have to understand that was a different period of time in Japan. In order for them to get a knockdown blow, they had to throw their whole body against it, whereas a boxer might use his hips and his knees, his feet to hit. So of course we have different stances, different approaches of fighting. And that's what I love about this martial art, is it's so packed with different ways of fighting that you have to, of course, assess who you are fighting against, and then you have to use the proper school, the proper technique, the proper stances, and the proper approach to defend yourself. We have many videos that address boxing out there, but again, a really ethical boxer is probably not going to be fighting you on the street. It's a good question, though. MMA Aaron writes, the Bujinkan always throws a single straight punch, and that's what I was talking about earlier. The reason the Bujinkan you'll often see, especially in Japan, as they throw that straight punch, is because it's based on armor fighting armor. And that's the only way with huge bulky armor you could hit someone, was to throw this lunging, what they call Budo Ken, this immovable fist, in order to knock the opponent down from great distances. When you wore armor on the battlefield, you were not close to each other. You wouldn't want to be within 8 to 12 feet because they had long weapons. But if your weapon was gone or broken, or you dropped it and all you had was a little knife, you would have to attack with your hands and hopefully knock the opponent over in the mud so that you could pull your little dagger out to kill them. Battlefield fighting is nothing like sports fighting. It's completely different. So you have to know, as a martial artist, what type of category of martial arts are we talking here? Are we talking a sport? Are we talking a battlefield? Are we talking ground fighting? Are we talking a karate, a kung fu, a ninjutsu? These are all different approaches to martial arts. Now, he writes, very few people ever throw this type of punch nowadays. Agreed. You're absolutely right. It isn't practical. There are people that throw straight punches, and the ones that throw a straight punch, because they've been trained, know that it's much faster. So someone who, like a boxer we mentioned, will throw a straight punch, that's because they know to get from point A to point B, a straight line is always quickest. It may not have the power as a haymaker or a hook punch, which novices tend to throw. But a straight punch can be developed with footwork involved, where it's extremely powerful and quick. Glad to see you guys practice against jabs, hooks, and grapples. Yes, our school, I believe, is realistic that way. Again, I believe approaching both worlds is best. You study the ancient scrolls, you study the techniques, why they did it this way, you choose the principles that are best, and then you make sure that you evolve it and you adapt it to 21st century American fighting or 21st century world fighting. It does no good to be stuck in the past and only studying the scrolls and doing it how they did it back then. If you're not going to adapt it, you're not going to be ready for a modern attacker who's not going to do a straight punch most of the time. Dylan from California writes, I like how you always ask the students questions. This never happens in Japan. Critical thinking, or just saying I don't know, is a very smart way to approach martial arts training. Dylan, you're right. I've always been taught from my philosophy degree to use what's called the Socratic method. That is a method of teaching where you don't just profess things, because you shouldn't believe everything your teacher says. You should always question authority. And I don't want to ever use the argument from authority with my students. So I use what's called the Socratic method, and that's when you ask a lot of questions of your students. You force them you teach them not what to think, but how to think. It's called critical thinking, and that's a really important approach in philosophy, and I believe in martial arts. Bruce Lee was very good at that. You don't just say, this is the way it is. A good teacher always has the power to say, I don't know, let's find out the answer together. An even better teacher will throw the question back on you. What do you think is the answer to this? And that forces the students to self-think, to become a critical thinker, rather than this person that bows and says, yes, sensei, whatever you say, sensei. And that becomes kind of a cultish mentality. And I have seen that from training in Japan, where people will just not ask questions of the teacher. They just take his word for it, and they never question anything. Therefore, they become a carbon copy of the teacher, which I believe is not good. You should become your own martial artist, your own creator, your own autonomous fighter, so to speak. I want to be the person that, and I've always had good teachers most of the time. There's been some bad ones, but most of my teachers have been the type that say, well, what do you believe about this? I have an opinion as a 50-year-old, 60-year-old man, as the sensei, but as a 25-year-old, what would you do in this situation? And then if they give an answer that clearly has faults with it, we can go over that. But I love the idea of a teacher and a student working together in a group in the Socratic method of answering questions. It just makes your student base better, in my opinion. Next question, Snuggle Monster writes, how do you approach students with disabilities? It's a good question. I have cerebral palsy on my left side. Is affected. It's a mild form. I am a practicing Zen Buddhist, which in and of itself takes an incredible amount of self-discipline, but I feel that something like this martial art training would enrich my life. Snuggle Monster, I completely agree. Sadly, a lot of schools won't teach people with special abilities. They feel it's too difficult, and I don't agree with that. We have a few at our school that I've always embraced. It depends on the severity of the special ability. Cerebral palsy, I'm not an expert on, so I'm not sure in that case. I've had maybe 2 over the years, over the decades that have trained. What you might need in order to train, if you're wheelchair bound or you have limited mobility, is have someone commit to come and train with you and help you, be your assistant. Maybe even be your uke, be your training partner. That would be wonderful. It might be a family member. I have had people with special abilities have family members that assist them on the mat with their training, and they become their training partner. That's a wonderful way to make sure that everyone out there has the opportunity to learn martial arts. I have known friends of mine, good teachers, who they won't even look at someone with special abilities and they say it's impossible to teach. You need to be able to move. You need to be able to walk. I don't agree with that method. Everyone has the ability to become better, and everyone has the ability to protect themselves. You have to overcome those obstacles. It's really important not to alienate people in society. That you want to make sure that they're all included. Everyone has the opportunity to become a black belt. Is everyone going to become the best fighter out there? Heck no. But if we see that you are improving yourself to the best of your abilities, you may achieve rank, at least in this school. It is possible. But I would suggest it's not going to be easy. You have to overcome these obstacles by finding a partner that will work with you. I even know people that won't train children. Their schools are like, I don't even touch kids. I don't go near training kids. They don't understand. I completely disagree with that. I started training when I was like 10 years old, and I'm a better person because of it. I can't understand why a school owner would limit their training to adults. To me, that's a lazy teacher. If you only want to train adults, you're a lazy teacher. You don't have the ability to teach kids. You're not a very good teacher, in my opinion. Or you're just cutting corners. If you want to have a school and you only want to teach adults, of course that's up to you. But you are neglecting an entire section of population that really needs this training. What we wouldn't do when we were bullied at school to know some sort of martial arts where we could say something and fight back and stand up for ourselves. Anti-bullying, sex trafficking, all this stuff, stranger danger. These kids need this training, so it's our responsibility as a martial arts school owner to lower the level of age so that we can take care of these kids. I would say start at minimum age 6 or 7 to train in the martial arts. Gordon writes, would it be possible with permission from another author to gain access to the full paper? The passages that you read were beautiful. Speaking more generally, I really appreciate these talks you give. They excellently complement the array of in-class footage you have on your channel. Thank you. Gordon's talking about an essay I read from a student of ours. I don't have permission from this person, Gordon, to email out the essay, as that's up to them. If you email us through the website, www.thedojoinc.com, I may be able to get the permission from that person to give you their black belt essay so you could read it in its entirety. But without the student's permission, I can't just say it over the internet. That wouldn't be right. But I appreciate your question, and the essay was indeed very moving to read. Next person writes, when did you first meet Master Ninja Stephen K. Hayes? First of all, don't use the word master with anybody. There's no such thing as mastery. When you see someone tack master on their title, to me that shows arrogance. You can't possibly master the martial arts. You can be really good at them, but when you proclaim that you are a master of some sort, you shut down the opportunity of new learning. It's a title that people throw on themselves to look more important. Now, I've been called master by people, but I don't like the title. It really is off-putting. It just sounds like you're saying, I'm the Yoda on the stone and I'm just going to tell you what to do. Try not to use the word master in your school or your lexicon. Get rid of it completely. No one is a master. Everyone should continuously be a student. I met Mr. Hayes in 1985. I was 15 years old. I used to have to travel from Massachusetts to Ohio to attain rank with him or to go to his seminars. They were called Warrior Quest seminars back then. There were no DVDs, there were maybe a few books. There was no internet, no computers to speak of back then. So you had to get on a plane and travel. Even at the age of 15, which I was, I had to save hundreds of dollars to go to a weekend seminar, drive to 1,000 miles to Ohio, or get on a plane to go around the country to train where he was. I would pick up what he did. Of course, back then, he was still a new black belt himself. But I would go then and train, and then we would bring the knowledge home and train with our friends in the neighborhood. There were no dojos around. Much later, in 1987, 88, a few years later, I went to the Boston Bujinkan Dojo and learned from Mark Davis. And Mr. Hayes would come to Boston maybe once a year to train. And then my time was much easier. I could go and travel just a couple of hours to train for a weekend, still pay a few $100s and train with him. I moved to Ohio in 1999 to become a personal student of Mr. Hayes, and I know him still to this day. He comes to this dojo on occasion every year or two to teach. He's a wonderful person, a great role model, and he actually walks the walk. He started the ninja in the United States in the 80s. He started the ninja boom. He was the first American student to bring it back and make it more popular. And I love that he adapted the old style into what his art was called Toshindo. And let me see, I had my first black belt in 1989, and then in Toshindo somewhere around 2000. Got up to a 3rd degree in Toshindo in 2006, I think. So his martial art of Toshindo is basically like a modern form of ninjutsu, where he took the old style and made it more Western thinking. And he was really a brilliant, and still is a brilliant, I would call him an interpreter, a translator of the old style to the new. A lot of people didn't like him for that. They were classicists, they were traditionalists, and they didn't like the idea of him modernizing it. I can't disagree more. I like the fact that there are still teachers that teach the old style and the new, and I have black belts in both styles so that I can take them and melt them together into a style that I prefer. He's a great guy. I love Mr. Hayes. He's a really good role model, and he sticks with it. He never stops. So that's it. UtahCustomCamo.com writes, are your swords and your videos sharp? The answer is some are and some are not. When you see us doing iaido or some sort of kenjutsu, the swords will not be sharp just because it's not intelligent to do that. It's stupid. So you want to use what we call an EI blade. It's not a Shinken, a live blade. It's a blade like the ones, many of the ones behind me are not sharp. The ones on the left behind the desk are very sharp. The ones on the right that are near the students that can touch them are non-sharp blades, and they're an iaito. We use those. They have a sharp, semi-sharp blade, but they're not going to cut you if you touch. The tips are always sharp on most swords. You have to be very careful with the tip, the boshi of the blade. If I'm doing an iaido of some sort where I'm cutting tameshigiri or something, I am using live blades, candle cutting, things like that at home where I'm by myself or I'm not going to endanger a student. I'll use a sharp blade because I'm taking my own training under risk. But when we're using other people in videos because of obvious liability reasons, you do not want to ever use a sharp blade. As a matter of fact, some of my teachers have said don't use a metal blade at all, use a boken or a shinai or something. I don't agree with that. I want to use metal blades because of the weight and the authenticity. When you're using a boken, you tend to clash the swords more, which isn't as real of a combat. It's not the same weight, the feel isn't the same, there's no scabbard to draw from. So I prefer to use iaito blades, but I do use boken as well. It's a good question. Sky79 writes, You said the shuriken are not used to kill in your shuriken video, but would not poison-treated shurikens be used to kill? It sounds like it would be perfect for assassinations. Thank you for the demonstration. Sky, you're right. Again, no one was alive back then, so any part of history that you read or learn about, know that it was tampered with, edited, lied about. Always remember, the person that writes history is the winner of the battle. So any type of historical record you're reading about, know that it might not be true. It might be completely fabricated to make the person who wrote it look better, to make the society more powerful, to make you believe things that aren't true. Having said that, the ninja scrolls that I've read, the old historical records, did have mention of taking the throwing star, the shuriken, and putting poison on it, dipping it in fecal matter of some sort so that you would get sick when you were cut, letting the shurikens rust in the rain so that when you threw them you could get tetanus, which could kill you back then. Again, take this stuff with a grain of salt. If I was a shinobi and I was about to enter a castle and I had to carry the shuriken, well, there's a great chance I could cut myself on that same shuriken. So would I want it to be poisoned? I tend to believe maybe not. Again, the shuriken were not designed to kill. The throwing stars are meant to hit and distract the opponent so that you could quickly draw your sword and run in for the kill. If I had shuriken, I would throw them and run in immediately after. So when the guy's like that, I would kill them with the sword. That's the job of the shuriken. It was not designed, you see in movies, to kill. That's just a false untruth. Could they have been poisoned? I don't know. Maybe. No one really knows. And if they say they know, they're BSing you. Regicidal maniac. Why do you keep repeating yes sir to the sensei in class? Is that something the sensei insists upon? It's very annoying. It can be annoying, but the reason why we say yes sir in class is part of this Budo. It's part of Bushido. The code is the part of the code of Bushido. If you want to really practice this and not have it something you do twice a week, but have it a way of life, you must be a very respectful person. You must be a gentleman or a lady. You must be someone who people look up to. We teach children to say yes sir and yes ma'am because it teaches respect. It has nothing to do with the ego. If you see a person in class saying yes sir, it's not because the sensei says, I dare you better say yes sir to me. I've been training for 2.5 years and you will call me Shihan and sensei and Shifu and all this. It has nothing to do with that. It is forcing us to use a language that helps us in life. When I say yes sir, yes ma'am, and I'm respectful, I get a better job. I get a better education. People look up to you more. People are more friendly to you. You have less bullying in your life. If you curse and swear all the time, people know you're not very intelligent and that you have a small lexicon. You don't have the ability to argue intelligently, so you swear. Or you're not respectful and you use, we all use slang all the time. We all use these lingo, but that's fine to use with your friends. But when you're going up to someone with authority, you want to be a little bit more militant. You want to be more proud. You want to be a little more English. You want to be a little bit more highbrow. So if I'm going to be successful in life, I need to be able to talk to people older to me in a way that they can understand. If I'm like, hey, yo, what's up? I'm not going to get that job. If I'm saying F this and F that every other word and dude all the time, I'm not going to get that job that I want. People are going to look down upon that. And you can argue with me all you want, but it's true. Your language tells the person you're talking to what kind of person you are, at least the appearance. In the videos, you'll hear them say, yes, sir, because they're listening. It's showing the teacher that they're responding. When the teacher says, do you understand? If there's dead quiet in the room, which I've seen, half of the people aren't listening to the teacher. They're thinking about dinner later. Or they're not even looking at the teacher. We teach them to make eye contact and to say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, because it's respectful, it gets you further in life, and it shows the teacher that you are paying attention. Glenn John writes, regarding the samurai swords, is it practical to use them nowadays? Glenn John wrote that learning the skills and things that are irrelevant to you, you will still learn new angles and new movements that can transfer skills. It broadens your horizon to new thoughts and new ways. Glenn, you're absolutely right. Even though it's not practical to use the samurai sword nowadays, using the katana, like Glenn is saying, he's very intelligent. He shows that by practicing things that aren't common, you learn new insights into things that are common. And he's absolutely right. By practicing with swords and polearms and shuriken, I become a more well-rounded person. And I'm not stuck in one way of fighting. I have many more options. And you're broadening your horizons to think differently, to new thoughts and ways of approaching the martial arts. Absolutely correct. I don't ever discourage students from learning different martial arts, from going out to the MMA gym and working there, and going to the local kung fu guy and working with him, and going to the Aikido school and learning that. Great. Any student that can broaden their horizons and get black belts in multiple arts is going to be way better than one that gets a black belt in one. So Glenn, very intelligent. Jonah Washburn writes, I can't help but feel like these techniques are for armored fighting. I haven't done much weapon training. Admittedly, any weapons techniques I know come from YouTube and 10 years of fighting with my older brother in the backyard. It looks to me like some of these techniques are for fighting an opponent who is slower or throwing his weight behind the strikes in an attempt to knock your opponent off balance. He says, I'm currently studying BJJ, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but it's too sport-oriented for me. Everything is practiced for cage fighting, not the battlefield. Not enough focus on the art itself, in my opinion. It's too competitive. Anyways, anybody's got any ideas to help me out? Should I train armor or no armor? Am I just crazy? I admit I have no actual experience myself, so please answer gently. Jonah, the fact that you say that you have no experience is half the battle. Can we give an opinion if we have no experience? It's a good question to ask. Yes, everyone has an opinion, but everyone has an elbow too. I don't take people's opinions that don't train. If you aren't on the mat, you have no right. You can give an opinion, but no one's going to listen to you. If you're training in a school and you've been training for many years, you're above a black belt level, your opinion should have some validity. But Jonah is very humble here. He's writing, I train in MMA, I don't see practicality. Jonah, MMA is quite practical. It is a sport arm, but any type of jiu-jitsu which comes from old China and Japan, you just have to recognize that it's a sport art. Of course it has street practicality, but you don't want to be on the ground in a self-defense situation. If a guy has a knife or he has friends, you're going to get killed. If you are in a ring, which he mentions, and you're in a controlled environment and you're on the mats, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu yourself to your heart's content. I love the art. It's very powerful. I love the strategy behind it. It's really important to make sure our ground game is good, because if you just do a stand-up martial art and a guy gets you on the ground and you don't practice on the ground, you're going to get your butt kicked every time. You're going to get tapped out. And that humility, I've had it happen to me, where you're tapped out by someone who's really good at ground fighting. It's wonderful. It really humbles you, and you're like, hey, teach me that. I want to learn that. Again, with this martial art that I study, Budo, we study ground fighting all the time. It's very important. But we're also very aware the last place you want to be is on the ground, because if someone pulls a knife or a gun or his brother stomps on you, you're going to be killed. So you want to get off the ground so that your assessment can assess the entire battlefield rather than being hyper-focused on one opponent, like two anacondas on the ground. If my head is buried in someone's gi and he's trying to give a gi choke or something, or a kimura or something, and a guy comes up from behind with a pipe and hits me, I'm dead. So MMA is not battlefield fighting. It is a sport type fighting. But Jonah, continue with your jiu-jitsu. You might love it. And then you might find a school that deals with standing fighting or weaponry or history. I can't predict what you like. You have to have your own opinion. But don't denigrate, and this goes for all of us, don't beat up the other martial arts. We should become comrades. Alyssa writes, I am in college where some violence can occur. Where can I get downloads of your curriculum of self-protection? Alyssa, you have to find a school in your area. Unless you live in the Cincinnati, Ohio area, you have to find a school in your own area. Colleges are not as violent as people say. A lot of people are, without getting political, a lot of people are really attacking colleges nowadays. Colleges are quite safe most of the time. You, Alyssa, just have to be very aware of your surroundings. That is the number one rule of self-defense, is levels of awareness. If you're worried about violence on you at a college campus, go ahead and take some martial arts. I don't recommend a 1-hour seminar or a weekend. You're not going to learn anything. You have to practice it. Just like you're going to college to practice your schooling, to study, I want you, Alyssa, to start to study martial arts. What will happen is after a few months, you'll start to feel more confident. Your awareness will broaden. You'll know things to do and not to do. You'll know to travel with more than one person on campus, how to travel at night and work with the street lights, how to avoid dark places, how to use your keys, who to travel with, what you put into your body so that you can remain very focused and aware. You don't want to put yourself in a bad situation, how to pick your friends, where your dorm room is chosen. All these things are byproducts of training. If you want to learn what we do here, buy the Striking the Tree DVD, which is available on eBay. And we're getting a new website right now being designed. The website will be out probably next month, where we'll have a store. You can go in and buy the DVD. But that's just showing you the level 1 basics of what we teach here. It is not showing you the advanced self-protection. However, anything you buy, a DVD, a book, you can't learn much from a book, but a little bit. You have to get on the mat, Alyssa, and train. There's probably several clubs at your college where you can go and train in self-defense. Talk to your friends. I'm really glad you asked that question. That's quite important. A lot of people who are younger, who have no training, really feel vulnerable in a public area, some sort of agoraphobia. But I would say find a school in your area. You can do it. And again, no excuses like we started with. I don't have the time. There's always the time to train, and there's always the money. If you're paying thousands of dollars in student loans and debt, you can certainly pay $80 a month to go train at a local school, or $150, whatever it is. Again, it's a question of what I'm doing with my time and my money. I have no excuse. For me, to train in martial arts is a way of life. It is not some casual thing I do twice a week. I have never treated martial arts like a hobby. It is a way of life for me, and I can't imagine my life without it. I moved 1,000 miles away from my family. I left my fiance at the time. I left everything and everyone with no money in my pocket so that I could pursue my dream. I would have completely regretted not training years later if I hadn't have gone. I may have ended up very happy back on the East Coast where I was born and raised, but I chose to move to Ohio to train with Stephen Hayes at the time. And 18 years later, I'm still living the dream. Do I have ups and downs? Of course, we all do. But do I have regret? No, I have no regret, because I tried. I went for it, and I happened to succeed. I know a lot of people that went for their dream and did not, but they don't have regret. Anyone out there, you have dreams, you have goals. Don't be a watcher, be a doer. Try it. Get an extra job, save the money, find the time, ask the questions, find the resources, ask for help. Don't be the person that 50 years later on their deathbed says, I wish I would have done this. Until next time, have a great day, safe and happy training to you, and go and get your dreams. Thank you.